Hey there. In today's episode, I want to talk about why originally I had thought that I would want to have a home birth after cesarean if I had a second VBAC, and why I am now choosing not to go that route. I am choosing not to have an HBAC and to have my second VBAC in the hospital again. So I'm going to dive into that today because I've had a lot of questions and comments about that fact. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm your host, Hannah Gill, and this is Motherhood Flow. Okay, I want to start this episode off by saying this is not medical advice. I'm not telling anyone what they should do or not do. This is my own personal preference, my own personal experiences, and what I am choosing for my birth. And I am a huge advocate for everyone becoming informed and educated on the risks and benefits of their options and choosing what risk they're okay with, what risk they're not okay with, and choosing the birth path that feels the best to them in their situation. There is no right or wrong way to give birth. The only way to give birth is the way that feels best to you and your family. So in my Instagram stories, I had someone ask me if I was having an HBAC, and I answered no, that I was not. And in the past, I have publicly said on social media and to other people that if I were to have a second VBAC, I would love to be at home. And that used to be my feeling and my thought. But people are allowed to change their minds, and I have changed my mind on that after a lot of reflection and prayer and research and all the things. I have chosen that that is no longer the best option for me for my VBAC, my second VBAC. A lot of things have gone into this. Again, this is my own personal situation, my own personal preference, and there's a lot of reasons why I am no longer choosing to go the HBAC route. The primary reason is because I am not comfortable with the potential delay in the event of emergency like uterine rupture. And I support HBAC. I support people's right to choose an HBAC for themselves. I just personally am not comfortable with the potential delay in the case of an emergency like a uterine rupture. So, and what I mean by that is not just the delay from home to hospital, but the additional delay that could occur at the hospital. Obviously, even giving birth in a hospital, there could be potential delays, things could be missed, but there is a more extensive delay going from home to hospital and then the delay after you're at the hospital. So personally, I am not comfortable in the event of a uterine rupture, even though it's rare, even though I've already had a successful VBAC, I am personally not comfortable with the risk of that delay. Everyone has different levels of risk tolerance. I am one of those people that I'm okay with the general risk of uterine rupture. Some people are not okay with the risk of uterine rupture at all. That's why they opt for a repeat C-section to drastically decrease their chance of uterine rupture. Some people are okay with the risk of uterine rupture, but only in the case of a spontaneous labor. Some people are not comfortable with inducing VBAC because of the increased risk of uterine rupture. So everyone has a different level of risk tolerance in what they're okay with taking on. And I understand that uterine rupture is rare. It's not as rare as some other complications that could happen, like an amniotic fluid embolism. I know my chances are about 1 in 100 to 1 in 200, about 0.5 to 1% chance. But again, I am personally not comfortable with the risk of potential delay from home to hospital and then a delay from like once you're already at the hospital. I also understand that educated and good midwives that know what they're doing can often tell signs of rupture and will transfer prior to a true emergency happening. But that's not always the case, and that's just not a risk I am comfortable with. I also want to just make a note here because I feel like, especially online on social media, uterine rupture is either portrayed as super, super rare, not a big deal, or like the most catastrophic thing in the world. And there is nuance to that. Uterine rupture is a real risk. It can be a very catastrophic event. And I don't think that it should be under exaggerated or over exaggerated. It is a risk that needs to be taken seriously and evaluated when you are choosing the type of birth that you want to have. I've spoken to women who have ruptured in the hospital and ruptured at home. And there have been situations in both cases where both mom and baby have been fine. baby has passed or both mom and baby have passed. So it is a risk no matter where you're giving birth, no matter what type of situation you're in. It is a risk to be taken seriously and not under-exaggerated or over-exaggerated. I also know of women who have had multiple successful VBACs and then ruptured on their fourth VBAC. So this isn't something that should just be glossed over, but it's not something that should be said that if you have a uterine rupture, you and your baby will 100% die. That is just fear-inducing and coercion. Now, aside from the potential delay from having an HBAC, so delay from medical support, I personally have a history of gestational thrombocytopenia, which is a low blood platelet count. And a blood platelet is the part of your blood that helps you clot, that helps prevent hemorrhaging and blood loss. So for me personally, because I've had this, both of my pregnancies, I am just uncomfortable with the increased hemorrhage risk at home. Again, I understand that midwives are prepared and have Pitocin for after birth to help decrease and stop postpartum hemorrhage. But with my increased risk, I am just not comfortable taking that on. Also, unlike a lot of people, I understand there's many people who do not feel comfortable or safe in hospital settings. I have been in and out of the hospital my entire life. I have had multiple surgeries, multiple medical issues, and most of you know that I have worked in science and medicine and have an education background in that. And I personally feel comfortable and supported in a hospital setting, not just because I trust medical staff 100% all the time. And I think every single nurse and every single doctor is just amazing and they're going to support whatever I want, but because I know that my husband and I are both educated and on birth and what we want, and we know how to advocate for ourselves. We also have a doula again this time around, and I am just comfortable in that setting. And I believe that I will be able to have a similar experience to my first VBAC, which was a unmedicated, low intervention, hands-off. Interventions were only chose when I wanted them, and I believe that I can have that type of experience again for the second VBAC. So again, I just want you all to know that there is no right or wrong way to birth. You have to choose where you feel safest and most supported birthing, whether that be the most intervention-heavy medicalized hospital birth or the most hands-off, no intervention, home birth, free birth, whatever that may be. Look at your options, look at the risk and benefits, see where you feel most comfortable, where you feel safest, where you feel most supported, and make the best decision for you. For me, that is going to the hospital again and not choosing to do an HBAC. If you have any questions, if you want me to answer questions further on this, kind of the thought process that went into it, I'm happy to answer that. I mentioned on my Instagram stories, I spoke briefly with a doula who is now a midwife in my area about this. She had home births herself. She obviously is a home birth midwife. And I asked her, how did you know that you wanted to have a home birth? And she just said she knew in her gut it was right for her. She told me to pray on it. She told me to think on it. She told me that oftentimes the answer will just come to you. And I've thought a lot about it. I've prayed a lot about it. I've discussed it with my husband. I discussed it with friends and family. And it is what being at the hospital is what is going to be the best case scenario for me and where I'm going to feel safest and most supported giving birth for my second VBAC. So again, if you have questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. And until next time, keep flowing.
You just finished another episode of Motherhood Flow. For more, head over to thehannahgill.com or on Instagram @thehannahgill. As a reminder, this podcast is provided to you for educational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered a substitute for medical advice. Until next time, keep flowing.